This video was sponsored by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. And right now I'm having a sale on my premium tutorials on Gumroad. You'll receive 10% off each video when you purchase using the offer code ANATOMY. The videos that I upload here are longer form, so if you enjoy watching the drawing process in real time, then these videos will be a good fit for you. Bridgman'S Guide to Anatomy is one of the most comprehensive, yet misunderstood sources for studying anatomy. Being a late bloomer to the art world, I was actually introduced to the book first when I saw it mentioned in a Proco video. For some reason it took me forever to actually pick up the book, but once I did, it completely changed the way that I looked at anatomy. So after spending a bit of time studying the book, I finally decided to try to share a little bit of what I've learned about it. So in this first video, we'll take a look at the general principles to glean from the book, and in the latter videos, we'll take a look at the specific forms of the body. So probably the most important principle that I've gleaned from the book is this idea of wedging and passing forms. The reason why this is so important is because it provides structure to the body, and it shows where certain muscles and bones overlap one another. The second is how he breaks the body down into shapes and how he exaggerates them. For example, the roundness of the ribcage and the squareness of the pelvis. By pushing these differences, the body feels very dynamic, and it tells the viewer which elements are bony or muscular. The third principle is that of gesture and twisting forms, which you can definitely get from other books, but Bridgman'S figures have so much form to them, all while remaining really loose and somehow still gestural. And the last idea is that of simplifying all of this complex detail into very simplified and elegant shapes. That being the idea of stripping your sketch of all of the details and boiling it down into a flat, two-dimensional shape. So what you'll see in this figure are the first two principles in action. I'm pushing the difference between the shapes of the body by exaggerating their natural shapes. In other words, I'm making the shoulder girdle more square and the rib cage rounder than it would naturally appear. Now this borders on the stylistic, but honestly, I think this is one of the most flattering aspects of Bridgman'S figures, so why not try to implement that in our sketches as well? The other thing that you might notice is that the body forms are interlocked. So when one body form comes in contact to another, the silhouette doesn't just abruptly end, but it continues into the following form. This is the principle that I see students ignore most often, and it really flattens the sketch, partially because having this continuation of line will imply overlap and thus depth. Ignoring this interlocking makes the figure feel as though the joints are devoid of function, and it also leaves the student with a drawing that has no interior line work. So all we're left with is a silhouette that has just no detail on the inside of it. And before I upset anime fans around the world, there are ways to make that work, but typically there will still be some overlapping of line work that implies that function. Continuing on with forms, another piece that we have to consider is rotation and twisting that occurs in areas like the spine. If you're new to this, start simple, just twist a flat plane. I have a bunch of videos on here about perspective basics, so you can take a look at those if you're confused about this, or you can head to my Gumroad for that. Once you're comfortable twisting and rotating forms, let's simplify the masses of the body, that being the rib cage, pelvis, and skull, and then we'll try twisting and rotating all of those forms. Yes, these boxes look nothing like anatomy, but being able to manipulate simple masses that reflect the proportions of the body will make it easier when we utilize more organic building blocks. And once you feel comfortable with this, you can feel free to skip this step. In fact, I would encourage you to do so. But remember, we're trying to capture the proportions of the body, and we're also trying to get the movement and fluidity of the body. So that means movement in the lower back or the lumbar spine, as well as movement and rotation in the neck or cervical spine. Once you have the hang of the first part, try replacing those blocky forms with rounded, more subtle ones. I replaced that rectangular prism for a more rounded egg-shaped form to reflect the roundness of the ribcage. The goal here is to try to transition from very stiff forms to more subtle organic ones, as well as to break the body down into digestible building blocks that you can recall from imagination. The more you can break down these very complex structures into simple ones, the easier and more clear your message will be when you're drawing. Eventually, we can simplify these organic forms even further into 2D shapes. Artists like Claire Wendling and Jaw Cooper are really amazing at doing this, and I highly suggest you look at their work. It might seem counterintuitive, but it takes a lot of knowledge and understanding of the body to break it down into really clear 2D shapes. But I'll touch on this a lot more in the future, and if you want a little bit more insight now, you can just go over to Cynic's Designs channel. He talks about this topic all the time. Hopefully this drawing that I'm doing here and all the ones in the Bridgman text act as a good transition point from those blockier forms into more organic ones. They also really help in showing the different planes of the body and how light is going to interact with those forms. So now let's add some gesture and pose to these simplified models. Again, these forms are going to show us how the structures of the body wedge into one another. For example, how the large latissimus muscle on the back inserts into the center of the pelvis. And so rather than ending that line at the silhouette, I continue it all the way through to the center of the body. The planes, as I mentioned, also do a great job of showing us simplified methods of projecting light onto the body as well. As soon as that plane on the back turns away from the light source, well then I can just group it all into one shadow value. Bridgman's books are full of examples of how he breaks the body down into forms, so I'd highly suggest you go through, take a look at how he does it, and then try to implement it on the life model yourself, just like I'm doing here. The last principle from the book I'm going to cover today is related to the gesture, and that's the balance of the pose. Whenever a person takes on a new pose, they change the position of the major forms of their body. If they, for example, tilt the ribcage backwards, then another part of the body must account for it so that they don't fall over. In this pose, you'll notice that the far leg is brought backwards to accommodate for the shift of weight distribution towards the back. So long as the person isn't leaping or falling, the body always has to compensate to maintain its center of gravity. And just to illustrate that relationship of the masses, I'll block it in simple forms. And now I'll end on some sketches that I did by combining all of those elements and using some more organic line work. I'll go in depth about the bones and muscles for each form of the body, but for now, just do yourself a favor and go out and buy that book. Alright everybody, that's about it for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and a big thank you to our sponsor, Squarespace. If you're looking to build an online portfolio, consider using Squarespace. They have beautifully designed templates that have been crafted by Squarespace's world-class design team. Adding images into your website is as simple as dragging and dropping them from your desktop into your browser window. Any images hosted on Squarespace can be edited directly within your browser using Squarespace's built-in image editor. Crop, resize, rotate, adjust the brightness and contrast, and much more. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/moderndayjames to save 10% off on your first purchase. And be sure to use the coupon code ModernDayJames. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like and subscribe with notifications on, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by heading to patreon.com/moderndayjames. And if you'd like to join in on our bi-weekly challenges, you can do so by joining our Discord server. The link is down below in the description. Alright everybody, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.